So hello and welcome guys to a video for Hedge Knight Wargaming. Today I thought I'd bring you something a bit special, which is Army Showcase, breaking down what I've been working on for the last 6 weeks or so. It's been an Easterlings project, which I've managed to strip some of my old models, which I've had since release. Obviously my painting's improved hugely in the last 20 years. I've been in the hobby 20 plus years. So they've turned out quite well. I thought I'd go for a bit more of a unique theme with this, because I've seen Easterlings done with desert themes to death almost. So I went for an Easterlings project. Essentially ice bases, typically made around a kind of a frozen lake theme. My idea is that the Easterlings are renowned for fighting the dwarves over at the Lonely Mountain, Erebor. So I thought, well, in a very Hannibal-esque kind of way, they would have to travel across, obviously, mountain passes and those sorts of things. So I thought it'd be very cool to do something a bit different. I'm very happy how they've turned out. I've got a lot of good feedback over from the GBHL page on Facebook and on YouTube and Instagram over them. So generally it's something I'm quite happy it's turned out like this. All the bases are resin, and I've done some little bits and pieces with it just to make them all a bit unique, and this was my first attempt at making a display board as well. So generally this is going to go in the cabinet, the IKEA kind of cabinets. It's all kind of cut to size, and hopefully it'll make it look a nice kind of attractive feature to the gaming room now. So on the whole faction element of the Easterlings used to come under the Fallen Realms sourcebook, which was back before the new rulebook, but generally you'll find the Easterlings army list in this book here, which is the Armies of the Lord of the Rings. There is due to be a new supplement out, which has recently been released from the GW community page, saying about potentially the war in Erebor or something along the lines of that, where hopefully we'll see some boosts to the Easterlings, because generally they're kind of let down by their faction. Generally they're not as good as some others, and therefore they don't get as much table time as most other kind of more powerful kind of lists would do, which hopefully will make it a great kind of scene in tournaments, because they're lovely models, and again, you want diversity in your games. I've taken them many times to my tournaments before. They've never hugely done very well, but they are interesting enough to do, especially with mounted cavalry lists and stuff. They are quite cool on the battlefield, but you can link in things like canned and stuff like that as like an historical ally to get in some more bow fire and some chariots and stuff like that to make your opponents think. But as a bog standard list, I'll go through kind of what you tend to see with Easterlings. Okay, so on the hero side of things, you've got one decent hero, I'd say, who's kind of your go-to. You'd have to take him most times, and that's this chap here, who is Amdur, Lord of Braids. Again, he's a lovely model, lovely sculpt. It's a shame he is fine cast, but he's kind of like the list kind of go-to, in it were. Being a Valor is a bit of a letdown, because most other heroes in Legion's book, he usually gives you at least a leader of legend who would automatically pass his first courage test, and be able to lead 18 troops, but in this instance you can only lead 15. I think that hints at a suspicion that you might see like the Dragon Emperor, or someone who's kind of from the myth or from the theme of Easterlings come out in the new source book to kind of boost it, which will be great. But at the moment that's what you've got. And Amdur is very good in itself. I mean, he's 3 attacks, 3 wounds. He only has 1 fate, because I believe he dies on the Pelennor Fields. But he's got fight 6, which is very good for any sort of human. Usually they peak at fight 5. He's got defense 6, again courage 5, so he's almost like an elf hero. He has several special rules, one being blood and glory, so if he kills somebody, he regenerates a point of might, I believe, which again is huge when he goes around killing people and heroes and stuff, when he can try and tag them. He becomes a banner. generally as he is, but he also increases his banner to range 6 if he kills the leader. So it's a very kind of assassination kind of theme to this list, which is cool, and again something that's different to the other games, the other factions. He has Dirters, which essentially is a Elven Made Blade, which is hand and a half. So again, with rerolls, if you were to say be in a combat with somebody who's the same fight as you and you'd go to a 50-50 roll off, he would potentially win it on a 3, 4, 5 or 6 as opposed to a 4, 5 or 6 if the opponent didn't have an Elven Made weapon, which again is very helpful because not many outside of the Elven factions will have them. He also gains special rule unyielding combat stance, so he can't effectively be knocked down, although you can still get the trap bonus on him, I believe. But if he gets tagged by cavalry and stuff, it just makes him a little bit more livable, which is always helpful. He has the phalanx, a special rule, so again he can fight and make way for each other within 2 ranks as opposed to 1, so that again is helpful to stop him getting trapped. And then he has the Gleaming Horde, so this is only when he's mounted, and therefore things within a base-to-base models with the same rule who are base-to-base, at least 3 of them would gain like essentially Shield Wall, which gives them +1 to their defence on their mount and their rider, which the Cataphracts also have, and some of the other heroes do have as well, which again makes his defence a little bit higher. The defence of the armoured horse then becomes 6, so a little bit less susceptible to bow fire, and then he goes up to defence 7, so again a little bit more defensive against bow fire in itself as well. But that's quite a helpful thing to have. One other aspect, so his last special rule would be that he's got Lord of Blades. Whenever the enemy model is in combat with Amdur, declares a heroic strike, Amdur can essentially do that same strike but for free, which is ridiculously good, because how many times you go into the leader, you call a heroic strike, Amdur will just bounce it back like Master of Battle, and keep his might points to hopefully win and kill the leader. So he's generally very good. And 130 points is a basic, but plus 15 you're always going to take him with a horse, I'd probably suggest, so he goes up to 145, which is still quite good for a 3 attack hero, but I think some things like your Forins and stuff like that you can get for 115, and I think it's a bit tough. You've lost a few points there. The other heroes are a bit lackluster. You have an Easterling Dragon Knight, who is this chap here. Similar kind of basis on him and the way they look and the aesthetic of him. He's quite cheap, 65 points, but the reason being is because he has no fate, no will, 2 might points. He has two wounds. He still has 3 attacks, which is very good. Defense 6, fight 5, strength 4. He's generally an attacky hero, but very fragile to getting wounded. He does have heroic strike, so again it's very helpful to kind of tag down heroes and things. And he does have things like Blood and Glory, and then the combat stance bonus, phalanx bonus, and the Gleaming Horde, so it's very similar to Amdur. So he can regenerate a lot of might points back if he was to go on killing heroes, but if he was to say lose a combat, he only takes 2 wounds, and defense 6 against strength 4 model would knock him out on 5s. He would go down quite quickly. He is a minor hero, so he can only take potentially 6 models in his warband, which isn't helpful when you need the numbers, especially when your main general is only a Valor. But they all have to be dragon, black dragon followers to go in the Dragon Knight's warband, so potentially you have to pay more points for the standard troops to get him into that warband, but it does give them fight 4 over fight 3, which is obviously always helpful. The last bonus that he gets on there is that he can use a shielding rule with his 2 swords, which is really helpful again to try and make him a bit more livable, but at the end of the day I can't see a reason why you wouldn't have fate on him. But hopefully things like that will improve with the new source book coming out. The final 2 heroes are that you've got an Easterling War Priest, who will act essentially like a shaman in like the Uruk High lists and the Orc lists and stuff, but just this is the only one that does for men. which is cool. It's very Easterling specific. It makes everything around them have fury. Fury essentially makes them auto pass courage tests, and if you channel it, which you can do with his 1 point of might, is that models around him within 6 of him would get a 6+ fate save, which is Easterling generic, so that again is quite helpful to have. He also had Blade Wraith, which is a 6-inch spell, which is cast usually on a hero model, and that would make a model, I think it's attack with strength 9 and set a blaze special rule, which is very situational. I found I've only used it a handful of times, and the Balrog and stuff like that has it free. But that's the heroes for them. Nothing too exciting. You've only got the generic captain left, and captains are captains: 2 might, 1 will, 1 fate. Generally, this there for heroic marches when it comes down to scenario play and things. But yeah, other than Amdur, there isn't too much exciting in the hero point of view for all of them. But again, your troops are very cool, so you want as many as you can. And the troops, the Easterling warriors, are typically the match for Minas Tirith warriors, so fight 3, strength 3, defense 6 with the shield. They do get the phalanx bonus, which means that they can back off 2 models like the Uruk-hai would, without being trapped, which is really helpful because their pikes, which I've extended on these to make them a lot longer than GW supply you with, will be able to go through 2 models as opposed to 1 like a spear would. So when you spear support, you can pike support 3 depth, which is kind of like your hoplites of ancient Greece kind of aesthetic with it, which is awesome. Again, everybody loves 300 films and stuff. Other than that, I mean, the Easterling warriors can have bows, can have shields, can have pikes. I mean, I tend to upgrade them to black dragons, which is an extra 2 points. Black dragon bonus generally gives you fight 4. I tend to only do that to the pikes, so you can pike support and then get a fight 4 up from your fight 3 front line. But that's generally because I feel that the Easterlings are a bit overpriced for what they are. Typically your Easterling warrior will start at 7 points, 8 points with a bit of war gear, and then goes up to 10 points if you get them to fight 4, which is a bit obscene. Especially when you've got Uruk-hai for the same points who are strength 4, and strength 4 is huge in this game. So that is one of the only kind of creeps with Easterlings as a whole. You've got new aspects around the Easterlings that have been just recently brought out, and these are the Dragon Cult Acolytes from Forge World, and they are beautiful sculpts. They're very much a hint of kind of what's to come. A lot of people gave a lot of gripe over those because they have a bit of flesh showing, but generally I think that's cool. I think these models are there to be kind of a little bit different, kind of challenging people's views, kind of very ninja-esque, and yeah, they're supposed to be going through a sense of training that should make them better. Again, the gripe with them is that they're still strength 3, and I don't know why, because generally they are looking like they're much bulkier and they should be generally stronger, especially if they're fighting dwarfs who are going to be defense 6 and above. It's just going to mean that the Easterlings are going to bounce off them with their strength problems. They do come with their own weapons. Their rules are 3 on Forge World. They come at fight 4, which again are very good. Their courage is slightly better. And I believe they're 11 points each, just bear in mind. I think it's 10 or 11 points. They're not very expensive, but they come with 2 attacks each, which is very helpful, almost in your Berserker realms, but Berserkers are about 15 points. Your Iron Guards are about 15 points, so they are cheaper than them. They also have a special rule, which is like Preternatural Agility or something, where they can re-roll any kind of jump tests or climb tests and stuff like that, but generally they should come into play quite heavily in the list from now on, because who wouldn't want more of an elite troop in this kind of garrison. Moving on to your cavalry units, essentially you've only got your Easterling cataphracts, which again are very cool models. I've kind of got metal and plastics going on here. They're defense 5 with their armoured steeds. The models with the shields on top are defense 6, but they do get the Gleaming Horde bonus, which is kind of like your Persian-esque historical aspect with the cataphracts that they used to have from them. and they would be boosted by +1 on their horse and their rider. So the riders then become defense 7 if they were in a shield water formation, and the horse would become defense 6, which makes them less kind of susceptible to bow fire. Generally, that's kind of it. It's not huge, not a huge army list, but generally this is something that a lot of people would want to kind of use because they look very cool. Hopefully you've enjoyed that. I mean, that's just a breakdown of what's going on. I think there's going to be a lot more out soon. One thing I should talk about essentially is the army bonus. The army bonus is very important, shouldn't have missed that. Is that if they were to go down broken, no quarter is given, is their special rule. Each Easterling model would improve its courage value by +1, and if there's at least one Easterling model that's alive at the end of the game, it will allow you, as in you the player, to re-roll the dice if it was a random control to end the game, which is huge in the grand scheme of things. So if you're thinking about a scenario like Hold Ground, where everybody gets to the middle and dies, the person that would have most models would win. So you might automatically lose it very quickly. However, it is an Easterling player with an Easterling hero alive, you can go, right, re-roll that, and the game continues. On that chance, again, it can swing a whole game. So that's quite a cool, nice thematic element to it. It kind of represents them staying till the last of the Bellinor fields, fighting against the odds when a lot of the Haradrim and a lot of the Orcs all fled. The Easterlings count on fighting. They're kind of a very kind of Eastern samurai kind of appearance where, again, they will go down to the last man. And hopefully when it gets a bit more love in the new supplements, we might see a little bit more bonuses on that and some other cool models. I hope enough to hopefully challenge Erebor and kind of the new models they're releasing from that point of view, like the new Dane and the new foreign kind of stone hand model and stuff that they're bringing out, stone helms model that they bring out. But yeah, that's the Easterlings in a nutshell, really. Everybody can obviously like, share and subscribe this as much as they want. I'm happy to hear comments and kind of what's worked well from you guys and what you'd like to see. The next project I'm currently working on are some Ents, so the lovely new Ent models. But the Easterlings, I'm glad to say, I've finally done. I've never painted so much gold in my life. But I'm very pleased in how they've turned out, and I'll bring them along to some tournaments and then, well, teach them players to play with them and stuff. So yeah, all the best then, guys. Bye bye.